Hey, what is up guys? MKBHD here, back with the OnePlus 7 Pro, arguably the phone of the year so far, and I'm not the only one who thinks that. So usually when a phone first comes out, I get to do an impressions video of what I first think about it when it gets released, and then we talk about it in the comments for a little bit, and we figure out what people are mostly curious about for the full review, and then I do a review. But of course with the OnePlus 7 Pro, that wasn't the case. I had just a couple weeks to use it, and then went straight into the full review. So now after that, there's been a couple things that have bubbled up, and there's some interesting tidbits that were left out that weren't in the full review or updates to it that I still think are pretty interesting. So this video is all the little things you might still not know about the OnePlus 7 Pro even after the review, and some clarification on things that were in it. So first, about being waterproof. So the OnePlus 7 Pro isn't technically IP certified, but they have also made this point to pretty much tell everyone their phones are safe being splashed on. Dave2D did his entire review video with the phone totally underwater in a bowl next to him and took it out at the end, and it was fine. Basically, getting a phone officially IP certified means adding all the rubber and the seals internally and then going through independent testing that costs extra money. So OnePlus has made it a point to still go through the same diligence to add all the rubber and the seals, but not pay for the independent testing and just pass along those savings to us. I can only assume that they've done some sort of internal testing on their own, which gives them this confidence that they can tell people you can splash water on it or go out in the rain. I don't know how much per unit this actually saved us buyers. I've heard numbers ranging from $10 to $30 per unit, which sounds like a lot to me, but bottom line is I'm okay with it as long as the third-party testing we're now seeing by people like Dave seems to show this will hold up fine. And then for those wondering about RAM, since there are a couple different specs you can get of the 7 Pro with either 6, 8, or 12 gigs of RAM. So you can check out this page in OxygenOS where it shows my average RAM usage. With my medium to heavy use, I'm averaging around 5 gigs of memory used. So technically, I'd be fine with 6 gigs of RAM, but I think I'd go ahead and upgrade to 8 just to be safe. OnePlus only charges $30 extra to do that, so $699. And you give yourself a little headroom. The 12 gigs of RAM is a bit more about future-proofing and taking advantage of OnePlus's RAM boost feature where it preloads some parts of apps into the RAM so it can open them even faster. But that's, bordering on overkill. I love it, but you'll only really notice it at the crazy high end of using the phone. And then there's still no Gcam app or Google Camera port for the OnePlus 7 Pro yet. Still crossing my fingers for it. Side note, I don't know how exactly it's gonna work with multiple cameras since all of Google's phones only have one camera. Could be interesting to see what that ends up looking like. Anyway, the stock camera app also has some things to note. Number one, in the settings, you can turn on or off ultra wide angle correction. By default, it's on, and I think most people will like it this way. It minimizes distortion around the edges. But if you turn it off, this nets you a bit of a more distorted GoPro-like look that you might be into. So if you want to turn that off, the choice is yours. Then two, you can actually choose which photo modes show up in the slider along the bottom and in what order. So if you take a lot of nightscape shots or if you use Pro Mode a lot, you can just move those up to be a slide away all the time or remove the ones you don't use. So that's a nice customization that I actually wish stock Android had or iPhones had. And then you cannot record video from the ultra wide camera. You can from the regular camera or even the telephoto, but not from the ultra wide like LG and Huawei let you. That is disappointing to me. I asked OnePlus about it. They told me officially they do not have plans to support video from the wide angle camera. That's what they said. Okay, another note. People were asking a lot about the speed of the retracting selfie camera. So what's cool is if this little pop-up selfie camera is out and the phone detects some sort of free fall, it automatically retracts into the phone. So in case it lands somewhere around there, it'll prevent damage. That's smart. So I roughly timed how long it takes the motor to open and close since it's not instant, and it seems to take somewhere around half a second to actually go from fully out to retracted. A free fall in that time is somewhere around 1.2 meters or 4 feet for any object, including this phone. So that means if you're at like selfie normal height and you drop it from 5 feet, it will be fully retracted by the time it hits the ground. But if you're just dropping it on a counter or just like from pocket height and it's not quite 4 feet, there's a chance it'll still actually not be done retracting by the time it hits the ground. But honestly, I still think halfway retracted is still better than fully exposed if it happens to land on it. So I still think this feature is useful. And a lot of cool videos came out of it too. All right, so there's some other features in OxygenOS that I'd want to see in some other skins. So this applies to more than just the OnePlus 7 Pro, but a bunch of OnePlus phones. That includes the ability to change the accent color of the entire OS to literally any color you want. That's pretty dope. Being able to hide any of the icons up in the top in the status bar if you don't want them to be there. I mentioned that in the full review. I still love that I can do that. And then also this little animation for stuff in the quick settings, like turning on and off airplane mode. It's a really nice subtle touch. A couple other ROMs also do this. And then since it's such a big phone, the ability to swipe down anywhere and get notifications, or swipe up anywhere in the launcher to get the app drawer. You can do this with third-party launchers, but of course being in the stock launcher, that's convenient too. I've seen this before, and I'm happy to have it here on such a big phone. And then I've got some clarifications from the full review. So first, on refresh rate. I think I mentioned in the full review that it was locked at 90 Hertz. Technically, this is actually already variable refresh rate. So the OnePlus 7 Pro display is always locked at 90 Hertz unless you are watching a video in the camera app or on a phone call, in which case it'll go down to 60 Hertz. So that's what I heard from OnePlus officially. Those are the times it goes down. So that makes sense. You don't need 90 Hertz on a phone call or even when you're watching a 30 FPS video or in the camera app where you're not doing 90 FPS. Those are the good times for it to throttle down. But even still, if you're just on the home screen or if you're just sitting reading an article and not moving the screen too much, it's still refresh rate locked at 90 Hertz. So that's still going to be eating through some battery life. So it's a sort of a middle level compromise. And there's still a possibility of a software update coming to improve those times where it can be refreshed variably more often. And then speaking of battery, a lot of people didn't like my assessment of the 4 to 4.5 hours of screen on time I was getting on the OnePlus 7 Pro. You know, some other reviewers are getting 6-7 hours. But that screen on time metric that I used, it's extremely relative and specific to your usage style. You can't really just directly compare one person's screen on time to another person's screen on time because these people don't use the same apps or the same accessories or the same brightness even. I've notoriously had a very taxing way of using my phones, you know, high brightness all the time, Bluetooth always on, NFC always on, a lot of GPS navigation, multitasking often. So you can compare my 4.5 hours of screen on time on this phone with my screen on time across other devices I've used the same way, which will range between like 3 hours on the worst ones to the 6 to 7 hours of the champ, the P30 Pro. So that being said, the battery life on my OnePlus 7 Pro, it's actually slowly gotten more consistent and slightly better over the weeks I've used it, but it's still not amazing since I leave 90 Hertz on and it's a 1440p display, max brightness, but I haven't gotten past 5 hours of screen on time on a day just quite yet. It's not terrible by any means, but you know, fast charging usually saves the day for me most of the time. And then lastly, there is a OnePlus 7 coming. It's just not coming to the US. So there's a OnePlus 7 Pro. We all know this starts at $669. The OnePlus 7 will be, you know, essentially a revised version of the OnePlus 6T. The teardrop notch, a 1080p AMOLED, 60 Hertz, but just with internal specs bumped up, Snapdragon 855, that type of thing. I kind of still wish that was coming to the US at a lower price. That would have been pretty exciting, but I also fully understand OnePlus's pricing strategy here. Maybe I'll try to get my hands on the standard OnePlus 7 anyway. Maybe let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be into. Honestly though, the price of the OnePlus 7 Pro is still kind of amazing though. Like if you imagine this from any other company, imagine for a second, Samsung comes out with a special edition Galaxy S10 Plus right now, some new colorway or something, and they give it no hole punch, a 90 Hertz display, and 12 gigs of RAM. Like you could easily see that phone being $1,000+, right? But because it's OnePlus, we had a certain set of expectations for it, and I still would say it delivered. Anyway, I hope this video clears up any questions people had about the OnePlus 7 Pro or gives you some extra information. I'll leave the link to the full review below again if you're interested in watching that. But this has been distracting me so much from Pixel 3a and this new Zen phone that came out with the swiveling screen and everything. So videos on those are now upcoming thanks to this one being done. All right, thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.